That moves us to our action agenda. Number 13, action as necessary or appropriate on matters discussed in executive session. Do I have a motion, Mr. Hogan?
I'd like to make the motion to approve selected employment items shown in Exhibit B.
Do I have a second? Ms. Huddle, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That motion carries 7-0. Do I have any motions out of executive session? Mr. Hogan?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to issue a solicitation for a construction management group that has the necessary resources to monitor all aspects of the Irmo High School East Wing project.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I heard Ms. Barnhart. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That motion carries 7-0. And that brings us to, I'm assuming there's no more motions, executive session. That brings us to number 14, the first reading approval of proposed revisions to board policy DI/DIE. Do I have a motion before we discuss? Mr. Hogan?
Yeah, I'd make a motion to approve the first reading of proposed revisions to board policy DI/DIE, fiscal accounting and audits, shown in Exhibit E.
Do I have a second? Mr. Satterfield. All right, any discussion?
I'll have our interim CFO, Ms. Marty Rawls, come to the lectern to discuss the changes, proposed changes to our board policy DI/DIE, physical accounting audits.
Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Ross, thank you for having me back at District 5, and I'm looking forward to working with each one of you. Tonight we want to talk about policy DI/DIE. All we are doing is removing the word all under external auditing. Normal audit practices will still be upheld, and they will do a sample of the vouchers and payments that are more than $50,000. So it's just removing the word all to go back to traditional auditing standards.
Okay, do I have any questions? Ms. Huddle?
I just wanted to make sure that the intent is still in there, which was if the vendor was paid a total more than 50, then a sample would be taken. So not just payments over 50,000, but any vendor that received a total of more than 50,000. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. So any payments of more than 50,000 in total to any vendor. So yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That motion carries 7-0. Welcome back, Ms. Rawls.
Thank you.
All right, so that brings us to the discussion agenda. When we were approving the agenda, just a note, when we were approving the agenda earlier, we did amend our agenda to remove number 15, which is the grading presentation, because Ms. McCaskill had an emergency and needed to be able to leave. So we are going to discuss the grading presentation at our next meeting. I just wanted to remind everyone that that's why we've changed that agenda. That brings us to item 16, which is the 5-year master facilities and rezoning plan. Dr. Ross.
Thank you, Madam Chair, trustees, and members of our community. We are bringing the next iteration of our rezoning facilities plan, our 5-year plan. We have said in the beginning that we're writing this in pencil. We're soliciting feedback. I want to thank our communication staff, Amanda Taylor. I want to thank Dr. Harris and the Offices of Student Services and Planning, and also our Director of Operations, Dave Wiseman. We have been traveling the circuit, so to speak, going to community forums, hosted those online. Thank our technology team and Jenny Garris for facilitating one that we had over 177 attendees in that one. We're doing these virtually, in person, and we're getting great feedback. And so we will continue to present this as we receive feedback from our community. Tonight is no action, but to listen to kind of what we reported, what we've learned from recommendations, and then how we're moving forward, and we'll take questions that time. As always, we begin everything with that vision that we love and grow our students, and that our district is a district of growth. Our academic growth is evident. I want to salute the teachers and staff for the work that they're doing. This does not come without them putting that work on the ground and making impact, making positive impact for our students. So that's our D5 story that's being written every day. There are amazing things that go on in and outside of our classrooms, and it is wonderful to watch, wonderful to be a part of such a great school district. So the question is, why change? With all that's going well in our district, why upset the apple cart? Why change the systems and the procedures that we have going forth? And to best answer that question, I use one of Aesop's fables. He had over 700 of these fables, but one of my favorites is the grasshopper and the ant. Very quickly, the story goes that a grasshopper was at play and an ant comes by in toil. And the grasshopper says to the ant on this beautiful autumn day that it's food everywhere. Why do you work? It's such a great day. And the ant replies, well, there's food on the ground, but one day winter will hit and there will not be any food around. And so the grasshopper looks and sees there's no indication of winter coming. It's such a great day, you can relax. But the ant persists that you need to store up today, for winter is on the way. And so day after day, week after week, month after month, the same conversation goes on until one day the snow begins to fall. The snow falls and falls until the snow covers the ground and there's no food to be found. Persistently, the grasshopper goes to the anthill and asks Mr. Ant for food because he's hungry. The ant asks the grasshopper, why didn't you prepare? Why didn't you store up food during the harvest? And the grasshopper replies that I spent that time playing. And the ant replies, well, you must spend the winter dancing. And so the moral of that story is that we should work today for what we will need tomorrow. And I tell that story as a primer for what the ant was thinking in the story. And that is understanding that we must be looking at sustainable decisions, preparing for tomorrow. And so the ant has a problem-solving process that I would like to take us through. What does that process look like? Well, I start off with Brian Tracy's process, where he determines the values of the team. And I think that's important for us to understand as a board, as an administration. Do we have the same values? Whose problem are we trying to solve? Because if we differ at step one, then the other steps won't fall into place. And then what problem are we facing? What are the challenges that we see ahead? Then identifying the cause of these problems or challenges. Create a plan and assign responsibilities and implement the plan and evaluate progress. So tonight I'm just going to walk through our problem-solving process, these steps. If you look at the first one, determine the team's values. Whose problem are we trying to solve? As we draft this plan in pencil, we're looking at the needs of the students, and particularly all students in our district. So that is the lens in which we address this. Then the needs of our teachers and staff, the needs of our students' families, and then the needs of our community. And so there'll be certain sticking points in this plan, certain points where we come in. Why did you make that decision versus this decision? We're going to go back to our value statement as the determination of are we making or whose problem are we trying to solve. And then defining the problem. There are three that we have here that we like to talk about, and I think they're all of equal weight. One, the condition of the school buildings of the Dutch Fork and Irmo attendance areas. What we saw through the MPS study is that we have, of the 5 levels of need, level 1 is the most critical need. That's we need to do something in short order in these incidences. There were over 11,137 incidences found, but of the critical needs, there was an estimated $34 million of facility needs. Now, We have annually in our capital about $15 million that we use to kind of handle maintenance every year. We don't use the entire 15 on that. So you can see if you take the level 1 and level 2, that starts to expand the amount of need that we have. And so when there's not enough capital or enough operating to go after our needs, that can lead to deferred maintenance. One of our staff said very wise, it seems that we're on a run-to-fail system. We learn about things when they fail. And so that's a condition that we want to get ahead of. The second one is a student enrollment and capacity issues in the Chapin attendance area. Lexington Richland 5 is estimated to increase 695 students by the 27-28 school year. The majority of the new students will live in Chapin, South Carolina. And the third challenge is the need to modernize our instructional programs specifically to meet the workforce needs of the future. Our future in the state of South Carolina is going to depend on making sure that our students are there to meet those workforce gaps. And these gaps require highly technical and entrepreneurial skills. So all three of these are very important. And so when you look at 11 years ago, almost 11 years ago now, the in-person enrollment in our school district, according to the 135th day report, you can see that at that time, Dutch Fork had 38% of the population of students, and Chapin was the smallest with 25%. Now those numbers are almost flipped. The smallest attendance zone is Dutch Fork, and the largest in terms of in-person enrollment is in the Chapin area. But where are the buildings? You can see that the buildings are in the other attendance areas. So do we build additional buildings to accommodate the growth in Chapin, or do we, what we're proposing, fix and fill the existing plan? Please note that this plan is not scheduled for rezoning to take place until the 2026-27 school year. So I want to talk about fixing first. When we talk about fixing, we were appreciative of this board to approve the MPS third-party evaluators to come and look at they looked at 25 buildings, 23 schools, 3.7 million square feet, found 11,137 incidences, rated these incidences from 1 to 5, and you received that report as it looked at site conditions, building structures, and interiors, mechanical controls. We looked at health and safety and security. A lot was evaluated, and then a composite of each one of these ratings was given to the actual building. That composite score from 1 to 5 was made. There were no 1s or 5s, but you can see that there were 2s, 3s, and 4s. 2s meaning that we replaced or improved the facility within 2 to 3 years. A 3 representing average wear and tear of that facility, but needed to be replaced or improved within 3 to 6 years. And a 4 was that did not need to be replaced or improved for 7 to 10 years. And so these were compiled, and you can see where the concentration of the 2s are. The concentration, the growth is in the blue attendance area, but the 2s, the areas that need to be improved or replaced within 2 to 3 years, are in the Dutch Fork and Irmo areas. In addition to fixing, it's not just bringing the buildings up to code or meeting the critical needs, but it's also making sure that we hit our instructional plans and our instructional priorities. And so we have presented in November of this year our instructional plans. So we want to thank Tina McCaskill and her team, David Prigge, his team here at the center, for looking to the future to see when we update these buildings, make sure that we update it for the students to prepare for their futures, which is different from our past. And what we see is the opportunity to upgrade the STEM program at Dutch Fork High School with digital solutions and artificial intelligence, a course that is currently being developed by the Department of Education. To round out the educational program at Chapin High School with theoretical set design and fine arts with a fine arts center. To promote the entrepreneurship at Erdmore High School with a small business incubator. And one of the things that I think we'll see that really will do us well on the ground is the construction infrastructure lab here at the Center for Advanced Technical Studies. Right now, employers are looking for surveyors, they're looking for operators, they're looking for those who are diesel mechanics to maintain these machines. They're looking for those right now. There's gaps in the line. And so as we build buildings, we'll be looking for these employees. So what better place than right here in our district to include that. So part of the fix is also making sure that our programs meet the workforce and community needs of the future. So that brings us to how do we fill our existing facilities to accommodate growth. And before I move into it, I would like to take the board and the community on a primer for this is a really quick lesson if you're getting your master's in administration, educational administration, on capacities. So this is a very simplified version, but it's important to understand how we feel our schools responsibly. And so there are 3 vocabulary words that you would need to understand so that we're speaking the same language. The first one is theoretical capacity or core. Imagine an elementary school with 10 classrooms or 10 rooms for instruction. And in this elementary school, we put 25 students in each of the rooms. That theoretical or core capacity would be 250 students. Now, if you talk to someone who's actually run a building, a principal, assistant principal, or a teacher, this is highly unlikely that this would ever happen. This is not rounding out an instructional program. So what we look at is what we call maximum capacity or program capacity. And why is that important? Because schools offer programs. Every school offers a range of different programs. And parents pick schools because of the programs that it offers. So a program could be an exploratory or an elective, such as art lab or science lab. So this same elementary school that has 10 instructional spaces would use 2 of them for an exploratory. And now if you max every room with 25 students, then that same building, that same space now has a capacity of 200 students. And students would move in and they would also be able to have art and science. And so the more classes or more spaces you devote to programs, the lower that capacity goes in the same building. We also offer programs, for instance, that by law can't have 25 students in it. So if we look at the different ranges we have right now, over 2,500 students who are classified as special needs students. And they have a range of different services from intellectually disabled to learning disabled. We also offer Title I schools, and in Title I schools, these are where we get our federal money. You can't go over 18 in a certain class. And so all of this in the same building can change our capacities. So what's important as we report out capacities, I want you to pay attention to these thresholds. 80% are yellow. That's when we're really using that building, that program capacity. We can certainly put more children in a building, but we start to give up. We start to give up our programmings. We start to give up our effectiveness. We start to give up those exploratories and electives that really make School District 5 special. At 88, our consultant, NPS, says that's when teachers start to feel it. That's when we may be moving around, but once you get over that, then you start going outside the building, and you may see where portables come into play. For example, if you're on the Blue Hall of Lake Murray, you can see they have 2 art classes and 2 computer labs. So what happens, that pushes classroom spaces outside. If you're at Chapin Elementary, they put their art and exploratories outside so that they can use those inside. So how we use the building, how you program the building, I think what's important is to understand that we don't take every room and max fill it with 25 students. We identify students by their needs, and if a child's in a wheelchair and we're serving them through their services, you won't ever put 25 of those in a room. If we have children that need ID services. We try to get as closer to the ability to meet their needs as possible. So when we calculate using our 45th day numbers, using this model of program, basically of our max fill, including our programs, you can see how our need breaks out. We have 75% capacity of that max, and below is green. Yellow is between the ranges of 76 to 89. That's that marker where we feel like we're right on the line here. At 90 to 94, we may be able to hold inside the building, but we're approaching the point where we're going to need to go outside or look at other options or consider portables. So this is our 45th day numbers of this year, and you can see why the proposal causes us to look at what's going to happen according to our demographer when we get to 2027, 28, when these numbers expand, when that extra 695 students come to our district, and the majority are going to Chapin. How do we handle this? So the question is, how does building in Dutch Fork solve the Chapin issue? Well, one of the things that we're going to do is, if you look at the Dutch Fork Elementary School, right now that is yellow. We would like to expand that. And as we move the population east, we feel that we could stop the slide there at Dutch Fork Elementary. However, using the existing building of Dutch Fork Elementary, we can now bring programs that are in Chapin, the 5 program, the Academy for Success, also into that current building as we move back east. So we will be grabbing a building that's currently in the Dutch Fork attendance zone, Ballantyne Elementary, and serving the Chapin population. Instead of 3 elementary schools serving Chapin, there would be 4 elementary schools serving Chapin. It would still move people back east into the areas where we would have room: Oak Point, River Springs, H.E. Corley. But we were hoping that planning with this plan, that with a new Dutch Fork Elementary, any of the movement east would be absorbed by that new facility. And that way, we're looking at this from Piney Woods to Piney Grove, a complete plan. As you look at this map, your eyes may draw attention to Leaphart and Seven Oaks as schools that are in that 95% capacity plus capacity range. And notice there that those schools are high levels of poverty, also Title I. And so this will fill up faster because there are no 25 per class classrooms here. All of these are going to be 18 and below. One of the questions that was asked at the last meeting was the impact of poverty on achievement. And so we appreciate the opportunity to talk about that as well. This is, if I go back, this is the map of our 45th day. This is what we're preparing for what the projections say our enrollment forecast will be for 2027, 28. So you can see more of those conditions and concerns in the Chapin area, but still having the opportunity in Dutch Fork to meet that need. So counting the forecast, that's why a facility usage in Dutch Fork can help us in Chapin. We're basically using the existing facilities to serve the entire district's growth needs. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about poverty's impact on performance. We see a range of what we call the poverty index within our district. We have certain elementary schools with as high as 84% poverty index and some as low as less than 20% poverty index. What you see here, and this is 2021 data, so it's not the current data, but the objective is still the same, or the story is still the same. When you do a statistical regression analysis of all the elementary schools in the state of South Carolina, and you map it by its it meets and exceeds on English and math, by poverty index, you see a relation. 71% accuracy, if I know the poverty index of a school, I can tell you its academic performance and meet and succeeds in reading. With 65.5% accuracy, if I know the poverty index of a school, then I can tell you its math reading meets and exceeds in math, according to SC Ready. One of the things I would employ you to do if you have time is to look at the South Carolina Funding Dashboard, hosted by the South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office. They have tables in which you can look at a lot of this data as well. You can look at it for spending per student, spending and achievement, but to answer one of the questions that was brought to the administration is how does poverty impact performance? These are all of the districts in the state of South Carolina, and you can see that relationship on that regression between poverty and performance. Now, this data is 2 years old, so you have to put a caveat with that. You may be wondering, where's District 5 on this map? And so we're the green dot here, and that's where we're aligned. So there is a relationship. So as we plan and you are looking at the movement, one of those things is we're considering is when we look at the rezoning, making sure when we reported out the poverty index, this was why, because of this relationship. Not saying it's causal, but it's highly correlated. So we have a very unique system of a structure in our district. You can see, and we've discussed this at length, especially what Crossroads faces. As 10 elementary schools flow into one intermediate school for 1 year and then up to 2 middle schools and to 2 high schools. Our plan is by bringing a new Dutch Fork Elementary online, moving the population from Ballantyne into the H.E. Corley, Oak Point, River Springs, that may push us more east into the Dutch Fork Elementary area, which having that new facility would help us with that movement. What do you do with the existing facility? There are a lot of alignments between the Academy for Success, Adult Education, and the FIVE program. Those 3 programs have met. There's a lot of great things that they can work out. And so we would like to put them in the same building, which would be the former Dutch Fork Elementary School, and return the name of the Rich Leck Center. Those 3 programs working together, I think we can optimize all 3. And so that puts us where, in this model, we're looking at solving the elementary school growth problem by commandeering the Ballantyne Elementary School building. We have been meeting with the Ballantyne elementary families. We'll continue to meet with them. Again, the plan is being developed in pencil as we get their feedback. But by bringing 5th grade out of into the elementary schools, we can create 2 middle schools that serve Chapin. Chapin Middle, which would be the current CIS or Chapin Intermediate School, and using the current Chapin Middle School to make that Spring Hill Middle, both flowing into Chapin High School. It is my plan to preserve the Spring Hill Magnet as a magnet school. That program serves our entire district. You heard it's a award-winning status, so our goal is to preserve that. However, with the new space in Spring Hill, I think we can remove some of the constraints that it was initially chartered under in terms of the arts programs. There's no band or orchestra, right, Dr. Lofton? So I think we would, but increasing those seats for those in Chapin. And that way we can, without zoning it, allow it to keep its identity, we would be able to meet the high school issue. One of the things that we do owe this board, and the question would be, well, Dr. Ross, where's the other map of what happens if you don't move forward with a plan or there's a failed referendum? This is not an easy map to draw because the current map doesn't sustain our future growth. But anything outside of this map, which we're working on to the parcel level, we have to consider moving programs, because I want you to go back to that target or more realistic capacity slide. It is not just moving numbers. It's making sure that when we move those numbers, the identity and the needs of those numbers are also met as we move back. And that's a challenge for us. There are a lot of programs that we provide our students that as we look back moving, we want to make sure that they show up in the new schools. And so we are working with that. But when you present this map, there are a lot of questions that are coming up, and a lot of them are valid. And so we're taking in community recommendations. And so I would ask trustees, as you hear recommendations that do not come to us, send it to us. We want right now, before there's a finalized per parcel, because once we send Dr. Harris and his team to go to the 100,000 parcels that they have to put in, and then Dave Wiseman to make sure bus routes work, we want to get as much feedback as possible. So we kind of shut down the offices at that point. So while we're working in pencil, we need your help. Now, there's been a lot of recommendations, but I'd like to highlight three big ones that have come up. One is, how do we provide mental health supports for students impacted by rezoning? That was one of the items that came up specifically at the Ballantyne Elementary. And I know student resiliency and dealing with adverse childhood experiences is important for all children. But we will continue. We feel like we're a leader in mental health services in this district. You heard ways to reach out, whether it's to Stop It or school counselors. We have our 9 additional clinical counselors. We've invested a lot in this, and but also want to make families aware of Care Solace that exists for emotional, psychological, and social well-being. The resiliency of our students need support. We have those supports. Another recommendation was the grandfather families that have been impacted by rezoning. Now, a blanket grandfather, I don't think would suffice in this matter. However, what I think can happen is to create preferred choice options. We're a choice district. You heard Sarah Wheeler share the choice and magnet options that we have. So preferred would be a different process for those who are impacted moving out of a school, having the opportunity to go back to that school they were rezoned from. And so this is something that we're developing. This came, again, directly from the feedback that we received from families. So as they come to you, please send it to us. I know there was another one we got this morning about proximity to schools and what does that look like. So we're going to work that into our presentation. So I would just share that as you receive feedback, let's incorporate it, and then this will make the plan better and better. And the last one was sometimes the 10-year plan can interfere with the 5-year plan. And the question is, well, the growth in Chapin will keep coming. How do you're going to have to rezone again if you build another building out there. But there was a really good suggestion on adding on to the existing buildings will allow us, as we go to that full pool in 2027, to sustain these lines, so you're not rezoning again. Now, I can tell you, at a cursory review, and I'm looking at Mr. Wiseman here, not to, you have plausible deniability if I'm wrong here, but Chapin Elementary and Piney Woods would be easier add-ons right now in terms of operations, because when you build with students on the grounds, it's a whole different process. Even the certifications and what the fire marshal will require is different. However, there's the ability to build on to Lake Murray. It can be done. And then I think the tougher one to build on would be Ballantyne. But we would be looking at, I'm sorry.
I think that's reverse, sir.
I'll let you speak to that.
Lake Murray's just the one we looked at. It's a little bit tougher, and, kind of looking at where the portables are is about where we could possibly build, because there's a big mound of dirt back there that's now the playground. I think that one's going to be the trickier. We drove by Ballantyne today and just scoped out some visual ideas, possibly going up. Lake Murray, you might have to look at going up, but just of the four that mentioned, Lake Murray is going to be the more difficult one, because the space that we would probably use is where the portables are at now. So we'd have to figure out where we move those students.
So our goal is to preserve these lines with options to build on. Then the question comes on, all right, how do we pay for all of this? And so remember, we are limited to our 8% funds. Only 8% of our total assessed value of our attendance zone can be borrowed for these projects. Right now, with the IRMO project, I think we're at about 96% of our capacity. I'm looking at Ms. Rawls there. And so, on the 63% of our budget comes from the state, but the 35% is the local. And just a reminder to the community, local is based on our millage rate, which is a tax on real estate and other property. We have two millage rates for local. One is for operating. The other one is for construction, technology, and equipment, and renovations. We call that debt service. I think we cannot say enough, because this changed in 2006 with Act 388, I believe Marty would, that our 4% properties do not contribute to operations, meaning our primary homes. And so prior to that, when a new subdivision opened of all 4% properties, we could count on those homes bringing us revenues for teachers, the lower class sizes, for support, for administrators, for nurses. That's not the case anymore. The lion's share of our facilities, of our revenue, is going to be on 6% properties, businesses, rentals. Now, we do also receive others, so cars and boats and campers. Those are taxed as well. But the lion's share of our district is of our operating is on businesses. What else is on the back of the business is also debt service. So while our properties, our homes do pay in on debt service, that's a lower tax rate. So what we're presenting is a plan considering the community's needs as well, the taxpayers' needs. And so we will have, this is our 20-year financing option of a referendum, if successful. That line that you see, that angled line at the top, that's our current millage rate. And what we see, we're taking a 2% growth over time. What you see in the 2024-25 year, that we're going to be using some sinking fund to pay that down, so we're not going to go over that, but we will see some capacity open up in 2030. So the question is, well, Dr. Ross, if we pursue this referendum, do we have to do another referendum in 5 years to add on to the buildings? And the answer is no. There are options, and these options will exist in a 20-year financing of our referendum to add on to buildings in Chapin. And so what could that yield us? Staying under that line, using the 69.5% mill, 69.5 mil tax rate as our cap, basically borrow from what we currently have. We, through our financial advisor, estimate $240 million that we could borrow in addition to our 8% money. What we are continuing to develop for you is what those security upgrades will be, the 2 rated buildings, the instructional upgrades, building the new school. It is our goal by the April meeting to make sure that we have this fully articulated with you with our estimates. So we are again developing this in the open and full view of the public for their feedback as we meet to get a much better plan. All going well. In the April 22nd meeting, we have for you a plan considering the feedback that we received in February and March. We are beginning to prepare the budget for May's presentation. If the board would have a deadline by the South Carolina Election Commission of August 15th at noon to move a question to the general election. If approved in the general election and we do our work on the front end, we would like to start in January moving forward with this plan. The 2025-26 year will be year 0 of implementation. And that's a year that we make sure all programs, certifications, teachers, staff, and all of those equipments that are needed are moved adequately, that you can visit your new classes, visit your new teachers, see where you're going to help with that transition to be in place on the 2026-27 school year. So in with why change? And our community is changing, and we must prepare for the future today, as the ant would say. So this is our current educational structure. This is the proposed educational structure, and as we prepare for our version of winter, this is why we present this plan. So that's our D5 story. That is where we have come thus far, and I stand for any questions.
Do we have any questions? Mr. Satterfield.
Just one or two, Dr. Ross. I don't want to keep us too late. So we're building, the plans are 1 elementary school, 1 fine arts center, and everything else is a remodel, renovate, bring up to date, correct?
So right now, we are looking at one elementary school, Dutch Fork Elementary School, addition of the Fine Arts Center at Chapin High School. One of the facilities that we're going to have to make a decision with is the central office. I know everybody cares about the central office, but it is in the worst condition of any facility we have. And we're going to have to make a decision about that as well.
Well, that gets to my second question, and thank you for clarifying that.
Did I miss anything? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just want to make sure I was answering.
No, that's okay. At what point in time will we get more specifics? I know that you're speaking in general terms, and I know I like all the color coding and estimates right now, but as far as specifics, let's say that at Lee Part Elementary School, what their needs are and what it's going to cost, and because those will be the questions, some of the questions that will be coming for sure.
We have, every principal has been given their list of the NPS report. And so you have that, but it's overwhelming. It's 11,000 incidences. So if you go in there, you can look at their ones and twos, and that's how we're looking at our budget. What you'll see is we prepare our capital, and we're going through our capital now. We're going to try to knock some of those ones off, and that's going to remain what goes into that. So I would say, to answer your question, I think as we look at the end of March, we should have those detailed lists for every school that we hit. Our goal is, and Mr. Knotts is going through a lot of that. If we hit this, does that take it out of out of orange into yellow? Right. So our goal is the 1st of April to be able to have that to you. And then we are working on conceptuals. I would say, if you want to speak to the buildings conceptuals.
We've engaged in an architect to just kind of give us an idea of what the new Dutch Fork Elementary would look like. Now, again, we haven't talked about land or anything. We're still vetting a number of properties, so that's still in a large working phase that we'll have to come back to the board at some time. So the drawing will be obviously adjusted based on the land that we have. We're looking at the Fine Arts Building up in Chapin. And the third one, Dutch Fork Elementary.
Central office.
Central office, I'm sorry, district office. Yes.
I think it would be helpful to have, just kind of adding on to what Mr. Satterfield's saying, like when we talk about the $250 million pot of dollars, and then we talk about our $15 million annual capital expenses, to kind of have like a list that says these 6 items are going to be where this $240 million are going, and we recognize we still have all of these other needs that we're trying to, fulfill with the $15 million annual budget. To have those 2 things like in front of you to see how we're prioritizing and where that money is going. Is that?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I know there's a process involved with this, Dr. Ross, and you're leading us through this process. I understand that. I was just curious, with the timeline that you have in front of you, it will be a lot easier to speak to it with knowing that, well, this is what's going to transpire at this particular school and this one, and as Ms. Hines was saying, what the priorities are and how we're going to progress. So, but I understand that this is a process, but I know that we're also on a kind of a tight timeline too here. So I'm just asking that question.
Amen. Great point.
Ms. Tuttle?
This is not really a question as much as I sent an email to all the board members, and I won't rehash that, but I'm concerned about the way that we're approaching this, and I feel like it's caused confusion in the community and that it's not going to pass if we don't have clarity. And, we haven't had a bond referendum since 2008. That was 16 years ago. And as I said last time, we're still not addressing the elephant in the room. Adding a new elementary school in Chapin at some point is only going to exacerbate the real problem, which is right now at the high school. Putting more of Ballantyne Elementary into the Chapin cluster is only going to exacerbate the real problem, which is the high school. In fact, if you look at this map, look at how much closer Ballantyne is to Dutch Fork High School than it is to Chapin High School. I would just, and I'm not one to go spend money we don't need, but I just feel like we have got to look at the real problem in Chapin. If that means building a new high school, that means building a new high school or expanding the middle schools or whatever. And I just don't think we're going to get another chance for 15 years. I just think we're going to have a hard time getting, and it's going to be disingenuous to say to the voters, oh, pass this, and we won't be back anytime soon, because we're going to be back real soon.
I just want to say kind of it's about the high schools. One of the things that you were talking about recommendations, and you mentioned the grandfathering, or the, what are we calling it? Preferred choice. what you see in these forecasts is you still see Chapin High School at capacity with all of the charts that you've shown. And I know we kind of talked about this last time about how we're going to have the school within the school at Spring Hill Middle School, and Lake Murray and Ballantyne would feed into Spring Hill Middle School, and the goal would be that school would filter more students into Spring Hill High School. But why are we not making that available for all of the elementary schools in Chapin? Because it still looks overcrowded even if that plan is successful, and that's not talking about any of the students at Piney Woods or Chapin Elementary. And so, is there a way that we're like pushing, if that's what we want to do, if we want to keep Spring Hill a magnet, and I have been to Spring Hill, and I think that it is very special. I understand that, but if we're still not, why are we not pushing it to all of the Chapin cluster to put them on a pathway to Spring Hill, if that's what's important? And Ms. Huddle asked a question earlier, and I just admitted to kind of omitted to the follow-up on that with, obviously right now, there's still a waiting list at Spring Hill. Where are those students coming from on the waiting list? And do we prioritize all Chapin students to go to Spring Hill instead of the Irma Dutch Fork? I'm
These
brainstorming
are great
out
questions. Yes,
loud.
thank you. And we appreciate it now. I think we take no offense to questions or finding holes in this. I want you to understand that. Please find the holes now.